Hello, race fans. Welcome back to the NASCAR Show here on the Grueling Truth where Legends Speak. I'm Alex Gray along here with Steve Risley. We're going to talk about the triple-header weekend that took place at the Kentucky Speedway. I was there. I got to meet a lot of cool people, or some familiar faces I remember from last year. So I'll dive into the Quaker State. Well, let me dive into the trucks first. Then I'll get to Xfinity, and then I'll get to Cup. So first off was the Buckle Up 225 for the Truck Series. This race, to me, was probably the craziest. This race, pretty much, first stage was kind of mellow for the most part. Sheldon Creed, I believe, won the first stage. Second stage was won by let me check. Okay, yeah, and the second stage was won by Matt Crafton, and that's when things got really crazy. We just had several wrecks. At one point, we had oh my gosh, I'm losing my train of thought already. At one point, the leaders between Brandon Jones and Grant Enfinger, they actually wrecked coming off of 4. It was really insane just to see the amount of crashes in I don't know if it had to do with the PJ1 they added, but it seems to me that the truck race was just the craziest. Brett Moffitt seemed to have had the race in the bag, although it came down to fuel mileage. And the race was won by Tyler Ankrum, driving for DGR Crosley. So that's a team owned by Crosley and David Gilliland. Tyler Ankrum, this is his first career truck win, as well as he is playoff eligible. He has not ran every race in the 17, but he has made a few starts for Joe Nemechek. So Tyler Ankrum, big win there, was able to – he had a strong truck too. He was up there competing for the win, and Moffitt could not last on fuel, and that gave Ankrum his first career win in the Truck Series. So that is pretty much what went down for the Buckle Up in Your Truck 225 race.
All right, I got a couple questions for you, Alex. Number one is, the trucks, do they basically run the Xfinity chassis with a truck body? Is that how they do that, or are they configured completely differently than the Xfinity cars?
I would assume they're just configured a little differently. You look at the trucks, too. I know they run the spec engines as well in that series.
And then the other question is, how, because this is kind of like the Midwest, because they get snow, they get cold weather. How is this track aging? I mean, we hear a lot of things about a lot of tracks. You know, Michigan has a lot of bumps and grinds in it. Daytona's got some bumps and grinds in it. You know, how is this track aging at this point in time? Do you have any idea? You get any feel for that this weekend when you were out there? Because I'm sure
Well, early on when the Cup Series first came to Kentucky in 2011, the biggest discussion was how bumpy the track was. It was a really rough surface. And then after 2015, they decided to give it a complete repave. So the track got repaved, and you know what happens there. Things become a bit more one groove at that track. And a lot of people I've noticed have complained about that over the past few years. So NASCAR, or more so Kentucky Speedway, has tried to make some different changes. Obviously, I know when they did the repave, they increased the banking in turns 1 and 2, but kept it the same in 3 and 4, which I thought created a rather interesting race the next year in 2016. Last couple of years was a race heavily dominated by one guy, Martin Truex Jr. You look at that. I know they kind of like toyed with the repavement a little bit after 2016, and then this year they added the PJ1, adding a lot of that. That's why you saw a lot of the darker surface on the high lines and in the turns of the track, was because that was the PJ1. They put down a lot more grip to try and give drivers a second lane.
You know what? Talk about that a little bit. Talk about that. What does that do? I mean, is it just stick 'em? Is it like putting goop down on the track to make the tires stick better, or what exactly is the PJ1? I mean, because I know we all hear about it, but what exactly does it do? Does it create a second groove, or does it just give better grip in the main groove?
So basically, a PJ1 track bite, and why do tracks use it? Put simply, that it is a special compound to increase traction for the cars or other vehicles. It's been used in various forms of racing for quite some time. So I know sometimes they'll take like a truck that actually has Goodyear tires, and they'll just, rub them against the surface to create that groove, that increased traction. And this is a way to combat the one groove racing, and I think that's why they threw in the PJ1.
Did it work? You were there. Did they have multiple grooves this race?
I'd say for the most part. The Xfinity race to me was the quietest one. That one was more, Cole Custer was the dominant car. But
right.
Mostly, I think it applied well. I think it worked well. I've talked to some drivers about it, kind of 50-50 on how they felt leading up to the race. Of course, we don't really know until they hit the track. I really felt like here, though, that the PJ1 created some interesting racing because, as I'm going to get to the Quaker State 400 here in a moment, that race, to me, there wasn't really one dominant car like we saw with Truex. At one point, someone else had the lead, then another guy, and I think the PJ1 did help. It gives drivers another option instead of running the one line.
So why don't they use this on every track?
It's really hard to say, and I wish I had an answer for that. I won't lie.
Yeah.
I know they're testing it at a few more tracks. New Hampshire coming up. They're going to test that at some more tracks. I assume maybe eventually every track may have it. It just depends.
Yeah, I would certainly think that if you can create two grooves and you get side-by-side racing, side drafting and everything that's happening with the aero package, everything like that, I think you would want to create that second groove and see the results we saw on the Cup race, which we'll talk about at the end, later on in the show. But I don't understand why they aren't just using it on every track now and putting it down. Is there any detriment to using this stuff? Chew up the asphalt, or does it burn into it, or is there any negative to doing it that you know of? You're not a rocket surgeon. I get that. I'm not either.
Let's see. I think they ran this at Bristol too last year. Yeah, they ran this at Bristol last year. I don't know too much of the negatives yet. In perhaps ways that it could affect the racing, which is part of me that wondered why the second stage of the truck race just absolutely went ballistic. We had quite a few incidents. But it's the truck series. Things can get wild there. So the truck series is pretty common for that, which is not a bad thing.
And how do they keep the back end of those trucks down? Because that back end's got to be so light. Weight-wise, because most of the cab is forward. Do they throw weights back there to keep the back end of the trucks down so they don't just swing wide open?
Once again, that I don't know. I wish I did. I don't know.
I thought you were a rocket surgeon.
Yeah. Moving on to the Alsco 300. The top three was pretty much the big three of the Xfinity Series. Cole Custer winning. Christopher Bell came up close, finishing second. Tyler Reddick third. Michael Annett with a good run in fourth. Chase Briscoe, Noah Gragson, Justin Allgaier, Ryan Truex, Ryan Sieg, Justin Haley rounds out the top 10. Austin Cindric had the pole, ended up finishing 14th. He did get into a wreck. He finished 2 laps down in this race. And then moving on to again, there wasn't really a whole lot. This was the one race of the weekend where there really wasn't a whole lot to report.
There kind of is. Where is Cole Custer going to end up? This guy is a driver. He's a racer.
Well, I asked that question to him and Christopher Bell.
Yeah, where are these guys going to end up? Who's going to lose their jobs? Is Clint Boyer in trouble? He had a strong finish in the Cup race. I think he finished 4th or 5th or somewhere right up in there. But he's kind of stuck right on the borderline of the points thing and driving for Stewart Haas. These guys, somebody's got to make a hole for these guys. Do you think, or where are these guys? Do you have any insight? Because we're getting into silly season now. It's that time. We're down to 8 races left, I think, now until we get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And that's when things start happening. I certainly think that Kurt Busch solidified himself for another year contract, I'm guessing, with a great win, and we'll get to that. But guys like, Briscoe, Bell, and Custer, where are these guys going to fit in next year? Do you have any insight? Did you get any feeling for that while you were at the track?
I haven't really heard a whole lot of silly season discussion or whatnot. Obviously, I know Christopher Bell has signed on for another year with JGR. With who remains a big question. I would assume perhaps Christopher Bell, he could replace Matt DiBenedetto in the 95. That could happen, in my opinion. Of course, I know DiBenedetto hasn't really had the season.
Run strong. He's run for the equipment he's got. He's run strong.
Yeah, he has been improving in recent weeks, so I'm not really sure. People suggested at the beginning of the year before Hamlin won those 2 races that Hamlin was going to get replaced, and now people are thinking Eric Jones, but he's going to get re-signed. This is a really rough situation going on, and honestly, we don't really know. Maybe Cole Custer ends up in a team that gets technical support from Stewart Haas. That's a possibility. Tyler Reddick, he's probably going to run at Richard Childress' Cup team. I'd assume they bring the 31 back. Chase Briscoe, I'd say he's got another year or so. I'm going to tag Briscoe as Kevin Harvick's replacement in the future. We'll see. I could be wrong. And looking at other names here, Noah Gragson, perhaps he could be a guy that's, he starts improving, he can start getting victory lane. He could end up being Jimmy Johnson's replacement in a couple of years or so. So, you see a lot of big future stars. They're really starting to shine, especially Custer, Bell, and Reddick. It's just matter of the fact remains, where do they go from here?
Well, okay, so in your eyes, who are the guys that are likely to be pushed out? Matt Kenseth was pushed out last year. Other guys, Ryan Newman's going to be on his last leg here pretty soon. Who are the guys right now in Cup that these guys are going to push out and take their spots? Do you have any insight into that at all?
Unfortunately, I do not. I haven't really heard much because I remember at Kentucky 2 years ago, that's when Matt Kenseth pretty much came out and said, yep, Eric Jones is replacing me. So, honestly, I haven't heard much. I'm assuming, though, we're going to have to hear something here relatively soon. We're getting near the second half of summer. We're getting near the playoffs now at this point. We're probably going to hear something here pretty soon, and it's going to be really fascinating to see how this all nets down, who's going to end up where. Silly season has been rather crazy the past couple of years, and I think it's going to be just as crazy this year because there's just so many question marks, so many. We're going to, you look at Custer, Bell, and Reddick alone, that's going to be a really good rookie class next year, in my opinion. So,
yeah.
It's really. Oh, well, there is.
And I don't think Hamlin's not going anywhere because he's got FedEx in his pocket.
Hamlin's fine.
He's not going anywhere. There's no way that JGR is going to dump him because that's the only sole sponsorship team in NASCAR right now, is it not? I don't think anybody else.
Them and Ally with Jimmy Johnson.
Okay, Ally are they sole sponsor? Yeah,
Ally,
you're right. I haven't seen any other logo on his car yet. So it's Jimmy Johnson, and so those guys aren't going. They're cash cows. They're not going anywhere.
I just remembered something. One thing I remember hearing, Paul Menard, basically, there's been some talks in the Ford garage that Paul Menard could potentially, step out in a couple of years or so. He pretty much responded that, all we have to do is just work hard on getting better and improving. But perhaps, you look at Paul Menard, they have the technical alliance with Penske, and perhaps if he steps out of that car in a couple of years, that could go to Austin Cindric, Of course, his father works deeply with Roger Penske. So
his dad's Tim Cindric, isn't it? It didn't often. I'm assuming his dad's Tim Cindric.
Yes, Tim Cindric is his father.
Yeah, exactly, and his dad owns Menards, so he's got all. I don't think that Paul Menard is going to go anywhere until he wants to go anywhere.
Right.
Yeah. Again, you got that sponsor, and that may be. Well, I don't know. Does Menards even sponsor him anymore?
Menards still sponsors Paul. They sponsor Ryan Blaney. I know they sponsor some Xfinity cars, and they sponsor a truck.
They sponsor Penske, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Who's keeping Paul Menard in racing.
Oh, yeah, and they sponsor Simon Pagenaud in the IndyCar series, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, Pagenaud.
Which is another Penske car. So.
Exactly. I think they're pretty much tied to Penske at this point.
How's the race shaping up? How's the race shaping up in Xfinity? I mean, who we think is Cole Custer going to win this thing? What's the standings look like? Who's in the lead? What's going on?
If you want my personal opinion, we kind of have a big three like the Cup Series last year between Custer, Reddick, and Bell. So, yeah, Custer, Bell, and Reddick's top three in points. No, that's the results. Anyway, I don't know why I thought that was the case, but they're still top three anyway. Yeah, Reddick, Bell, Custer. Then it's Cindric, Allgaier, Gregson, Annette, Briscoe, Nemechek, Haley, Sieg, and Brandon Jones. That's pretty much the top 12 currently in points, and those would be the drivers. If we start the playoffs now, those would be the drivers that are in the postseason. So pretty much I think for sure it's going to be Reddick, Bell, Custer, and a fourth driver. Who that fourth driver is remains to be seen. The only driver outside of those three that's an Xfinity regular that has won is Michael Annett when he got the win at Daytona. Besides that, of course, you had about 5 Kyle Busch wins, and then it's been Reddick, Bell, and Custer. So I have a good feeling it's one of these three that's probably going to walk out as an Xfinity champion in November. So that's what the Xfinity Series is shaping up like.
Okay. All right. You want to move on to NASCAR now? The big boys?
Yeah, let's do it.
I got three words.
Okay.
Arrow, arrow, arrow.
Yeah.
What they have done for the mile-and-a-half tracks, these guys got it right. I mean, NASCAR is in a little bit of a renaissance, in my opinion, right now. I understand it's a regional sport, so to speak. It peaked and it's come back down. But they got the aero packages right, and these are great races now. I mean, this was a great race. And to see two brothers fight it off at the end and win by half a car length, this can be nothing but great for NASCAR right now and the resurgence of the sport coming back into the fold. And television rights, contracts are going to start coming up pretty soon, everything like that. What were your thoughts on the race?
Overall, this was probably the best Cup race I've seen at Kentucky Speedway. The reason for that is there was quite a few different leaders in this. It wasn't like one or two guys that dominated the entire race like normal. Daniel Suarez won the pole, led 52 laps, had a really strong car. Logano, Boyer even. Hamlin led some laps. Kyle Busch and Kurt Busch. Ricky Stenhouse led for a little bit, and even Ryan Newman. So, I mean, I felt like there wasn't really one dominant car. We had quite a few dominant cars. Early on, first stage, top three was Suarez, Amarola, and Harvick. And, I was down there by pit road watching the qualifying, and I was sitting there going, okay, Stewart Haas looks fast. Looks like somebody from Stewart Haas might win this race. That's what I was thinking here. That didn't really pan out, but still, Stewart Haas still did pretty decent. Boyer 6th, Suarez in 8th. He's outside the cut, though, so he needs more good results like that. But he's got Kentucky settled down. And by the way, fun fact with Suarez, I was walking back to the media center. I think I was grabbing something to drink, and I see Dave Burns there. Well, and Suarez decides to hop over the fence that separates the media center and the garage to do the interview, which I thought was just hilarious. And they were like, "Is it in your contract to even? Is that even counted as an extreme sport?" It was just pretty funny. We were all laughing. So yeah, Suarez, good run for him. Let's see here. So first off, and then the finish. It looked like at first Logano had it in the bag. He had gotten by Kyle Busch, which he was my pick to win. This is the track where he kicked his career off. I mean, so this has a special place in his heart. And obviously the wreck by Bubba Wallace brought out the caution, and we saw probably one of the greatest finishes yet this season. The battle between brothers, Kurt and Kyle Busch, which to me also gave me back memories of the very first Cup race when early on they were the two dominant cars. Of course, that was when Kurt was driving for that 1 year for in the 22 for Penske. But in the end, they were beating and banging, and Kurt Busch was able to edge out his brother. Fun story, I was in the media room at post-race conference by Kurt Busch and his crew chief, and no joke, he was supposed to fly back with his brother, and his brother and Kyle had left him behind. So, I mean, hey, I guess it makes sense. And Kurt, because I remember his car was smoking a bit from the tire road because, the two cars just beating and banging off each other. Kurt went, I have 1 mile left. It's going to stick. And, that tire road didn't stick. I was going to jerk the wheel left and take him out with me, which was, the entire place erupted with laughter because that's something the Busch brothers would probably do to each other, which that would have, because my initial thought was, as unpredictable as this is right now, I thought to myself, it wouldn't be surprising if these two ended up taking each other out. Eric Jones wins. By the way, a good run for that 20 team. But still. Yeah.
He was in the top 5, wasn't he? Did he third? Did he finish third?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, Eric Jones was third.
Yeah.
Okay,
so talk about this win in the sense of what it means to Ganassi. I mean, when's the last time they won? And it's not Kyle Larson. It's Kurt Busch, who's on a 1-year deal with them. I mean, kind of give us a little insight what you picked up at the track, what this means to Kurt Busch. Did he buy himself a few more years in NASCAR, Cup racing, and what does it do for Ganassi in terms of? I mean, this is a great win for this team. I mean, because he earned the win. It wasn't a fluke. It wasn't like the week before with the 77 car winning Daytona where it rained out. This was a win. I mean, against arguably the best driver in NASCAR right now. So what's your thoughts on all that? Let's start with that. I got about 5 questions to ask you, so get ready to talk.
All right. Well, yeah, Kurt Busch, you look at this situation here, some people suggested that he may retire at the end of this season. Like this could be a one-off kind of thing for Kurt. Obviously, he got replaced by Suarez in the 41. He's, before Elliott and Bowman got the wins, this one car looked like the best Chevy on the track. And I'll be honest with you, Kurt Busch is probably a big sleeper for the championship war. I would not rule him out.
No, I wouldn't either. Not at all.
I think he said, Ganassi pretty much, when he called him, he's like, I'm bringing you here because I know you can win or something like that. And, Kurt, he's a heck of a driver, and he's a really smart car guy. He knows what it takes to win. And last year he had a rather quiet year. Obviously, he was my dark horse for reasons, because last week he probably should have won Daytona, but had that big oopsie on that caution when they all thought they were going to get back racing, and then the lightning came in, and then the rest was history. Looking at this now, it's like as if redemption was founded, and And one more thing about the finish. Don't you think you had some reminiscence of the very famous battle for the finish at Darlington back in 2003 between Kurt Busch and Ricky Craven? Because that made me think of
yeah.
Which I think this is
That's
definitely
a good call.
Yeah,
that's a good call. And
you
know, when Busch tends to win these things, it's like he's not going to back down. He's hell or high water. He's just going to go. I'm going to go for it. That's a great call. I didn't think about that until you just brought that up, but that's a really great call.
Yeah, it just had the feeling of that, and you look back at this is the third time that the brothers have finished 1-2. Both times before, Kyle had won. So this time around, the older brother, Kurt, was able to sneak it away this time. Heck of a finish. I literally almost wanted to just go crazy. I was sitting on pit road in between Kyle Busch's pit box and Paul Menard's pit box when it happened. It was a really cool moment, and I've never heard the crowd erupt like that at Kentucky. Like, I don't know if it's just me, but the crowd erupted for Kurt. It was like as if Dale Jr. had won a race. I mean, longtime veteran, and I'm sure more people were probably happy to see Kyle Busch lose. And another fun fact, this is the first Chevy win for the Cup race at Kentucky. Chevy has not won that race until this point. So that streak has finally been snapped with Kurt Busch's victory. So.
All right. So what does this do for Ganassi? I mean, does this make them legitimate again? I mean, they basically they hadn't won. I mean, Larson hadn't won, a year and a half?
Yeah, even though he won the All-Star race.
I mean, that's the All-Star race. I mean, we don't count. That's like watching the NBA All-Star game, 175 to 154. I mean, nobody plays any defense. Nobody tries to, they just go out there and screw around for 48 minutes. So that's kind of what the All-Star race is all about. But this is the first points race win for Ganassi in how long? And what does this mean for Ganassi? Does this put them kind of back in the upper echelon? Because I thought they were kind of becoming a second-tiered team. I mean, Ganassi wasn't even there. I think he was in Indy, wasn't he? He was at Toronto, wasn't he?
Yeah, because I remember he had a phone call from Ganassi in Victory Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Busch said, I'll call you back. How about that? Tell your boss, I'm going to call you back. Sorry, I got to go celebrate.
Yeah, he mentioned that in the post-race press conference. Yeah, I mean, this is going to put Ganassi back in contention. It's been since September 2017 with Larson at Richmond was the last time Ganassi got into Victory Lane. So, I mean, that one car, that one car has just been fast all year. And I think they're gonna be the ultimate sleeper of anyone else if to run for the championship. Because for a guy like Kurt Busch, does his career continue after this year is a big question. Perhaps after this win, that's the case.
I agree.
Larson,
I'm thrilled to death for Kurt Busch. I mean, that's a great win, and you like to root for the old guys. I'm 60. I love to root for the old guys, and he's up there in age. I went through the whole cycle of life with Earnhardt. I hated him, then I loved him, and then I cried when he passed away. And it just, you kind of go through that, and I'm glad to see them win. Chip has certainly put his team. He stayed with NASCAR. He's put his team in there every year. He's got good drivers. He's got two great drivers. So it's always fun to see success come to teams that work hard at it and don't necessarily have the resources that like a JGR or an SHR or a Hendrick has or an RCR has, but they come out and they get quality drivers. So how important has stage racing helped NASCAR? Because it seems to me these guys are driving harder the entire race now because they want these points now. Because now we're getting down to like the final 8 races, and I think there's 8 cars locked in by wins, and there's Harvick who's third in the points, so he's going to be in. And then you've got a lot of conglomeration going on there, all point down to that. How important has the stage racing segment been to NASCAR? Is it good or bad?
I was always 50-50 on stage racing, and I would say that stage racing has definitely changed the landscape of racing. I think stage racing is all right, in the sense of it shakes the racing up. And not to mention, I always bring up how the younger generation, my generation, has a shorter attention span. That's because of all the information age, the technology, and everything else. Perhaps I always thought that was a reason why stage racing was introduced. It's one of those things where it's not the end of the world. It's definitely changed NASCAR for sure. Honestly, it's all right. I think for the most part, stage racing has done pretty decent.
Okay. I think it's been great. I wasn't a big fan of it at first. 'Cause I don't like competition cautions, or I just let them race, let them run.
Right.
And I'm old school, so I'm like, just Petty can win by 7 laps, let him win by 7 laps. But that's old school. That's very old school, and that's never going to happen again. You're never going to have any driver win by more than a few seconds now. I mean, NASCAR makes sure that's not going to happen, but I think stage racing has been great for the sport. I think that it forces you to decide what you're going to do, strategy-wise in terms of pitting, 2 laps before, get back out and get back in the lead, or just stay out and try and get the points. I mean, it's added a lot of strategy to the sport, which I think is great. So I've really come to love stage racing. I mean, I think it's kind of like mini races inside the race. And it's as important to win. You get a guy like, let's just use him as an example, Chase Elliott, who finishes 15th. But, and I don't think he did much this week. He didn't have a very good week this week. But you get a guy who finishes 15th but picks up a lot of stage points, and all of a sudden he's like 4th or 5th in points earned for the week. And I think that's a great thing. So I like it. All right, okay. Let's go back to the big ugly dog. Stewart Haas still has not won a race. What the hell is going on with Stewart Haas Racing?
Gosh, maybe it's just that they're not adjusted to the package. I don't really know what else to say here.
They're running Fords. Fords are doing good. I mean, there's no problem with Fords. Penske's winning. A lot of the Ford teams are winning. What's going on with Stewart Haas?
Well, at this point, it's hard to say because, even at the beginning of the race, they looked fast. They were top 3 all of stage 1. Suarez, Almirola, Harvick, and, of course, Boyer was running up in there, too. It seems like they're running well, but they're not winning. They're not doing what Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Martin Truex Jr., these other guys have done. It just hasn't been the case. Which, by the way, a lot of big names seem to have finished quite in the back. Truex in 19th, Keselowski 20th, 2 guys who are the kings of Kentucky Speedway. Kevin Harvick finished 22nd. I
Harvick was never a factor. Harvick was never even really a factor in this race.
Yeah, he really wasn't. After about the first stage, he just kind of tapered off. You're sitting there going, when the heck are we going to win a race, guys? If you're Tony Stewart and Gene Haas, you're sitting there going, when are we going to win?
Well, they're putting a lot of money into it. I mean, and Gene puts a lot of money into his F1 package too. I mean, that's hundreds of millions of dollars in F1, and that's a lot more expensive than NASCAR.
Yeah, but speaking of Haas's F1 team, have you heard that story going on with Rich Energy?
No, go ahead. I know his F1 team's sucking big time. Yeah. They're not doing well at all. What's going on there?
Let me look up. I want to make sure I get this right because I don't follow Formula One as much as.
He's just throwing money. He's just throwing money into a pond. That's all he's doing over there. I mean, They run 20 cars, and I watch every F1 race every Sunday morning at 3 in the morning in L.A. I get up and watch these damn races or tape them and watch them at 6 in the morning because I don't want to get on social media and then not figure out who won. And it's going to be Lewis Hamilton once again.
Yeah. And I wanted to point that out.
I don't understand, the technology there. But that's a technology-driven race, more so than even NASCAR. Because I think the thing that's great about NASCAR is they have brought the driver back into the game. And I think that's what the aero package has done. And I think that's why Kurt Busch wins. That's why guys, make pit crew chiefs make calls that cost Kurt the win last week. They have brought the mind back into the sport and not just let it be the car. And that's what the aero package has done. And I'm so grateful for that. So, but anyway, go ahead. What's going on with Haas and F1?
So basically, if I can read this correctly, there's been this whole controversy with their sponsor, Rich Energy, which apparently is now Lightning Bolt Limited, which has only been a company that's been around for like 4 years. So, yeah, I guess, and their CEO departed, and looks like, Rich Energy has said some kind of jerk-like things and or more so egotistical things. And now Haas is kind of going after them. So I'm just going to, so from what I'm seeing here, there's just been a lot of, their sponsor pretty much, Haas F1 title sponsor Rich Energy terminates their contract. There's Rich Energy CEO accuses shareholders of mounting coup. I don't know. There's a lot of wacky things going on here involving the sponsorship controversy.
Yeah.
Perhaps this is another company like DC Solar that pops up thinking they have the money just coming out of nowhere, and suddenly
Nature Valley is another one.
Nature's Bakery, yeah.
Nature's Bakery, yeah. They come in, I think they can, somebody wants to go to a race and get hot passes. That's basically what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked for Pfizer for 5 years. We had the Viagra car, and they had no clue what they were doing. I mean, they just threw money at Rouse Racing, and whether it paid off for them or not, I don't know. But somebody got to burr up their butt that they wanted to do that with Pfizer and Mark Martin car and the 6 car and Viagra, and I think he won like maybe 1 or 2 races for us the entire time he was under our sponsorship. So, whatever. What do you hear? What are you hearing right now? Let's finish up with the race. Great win for Kurt Busch. Great win for Chip Ganassi Racing. Good for the sport. Any negatives at all in this race at all? Anything? I mean, I saw no penalties, no real major penalties.
Yeah, there isn't really a whole lot of bad to talk about because I know a lot of people always say, "Oh, Kentucky's boring." So for once, Kentucky was not boring, not at all.
No, it was not. It was a great race. It was a great. And why does not NASCAR not go to almost entirely Saturday night racing? I mean, it gives them the escape to run on Sundays if they get weather, and like they did at Daytona the week before. And I mean, my wife said, "I'm going to go play cars." I'm like, "Go! I got a NASCAR race to watch." I'm going to sit out by the pool and watch the NASCAR race and grill out a burger and a hot dog and have fun at it. And go ahead, do what you want to do. Why does NASCAR not go to more Saturday night racing?
Hard to say. I think Saturday night racing is really good. I think it produces a lot more drama. It's just Saturday night, it has that good racing feeling, in my opinion, better than a Sunday. So,
Sunday I'm always out working in the yard or walking my dogs or learning how to surf or doing something stupid that's going to kill myself eventually down the road, eaten by a shark. But Saturday night, it's just a great time to sit down and, for their niche market, which they have, it's a really great thing to do on Saturday night is sit down and watch the race because it was a very good race. It was well done by Kentucky. They did a great job putting it on. You love to see communities like that do that kind of thing because, that's their bread and butter. That's their soul. It's not like it's Daytona where we have everything else in the world going on around us. Disney World's 50 miles away. We don't worry about it. But, for Kentucky, they did a great job of that race. It was a great race, great win. Great win for Kurt Busch, great win for Chip Ganassi Racing, and a great duel for NASCAR. You got two brothers duking it out on the last two laps. I mean, what more could you ask for?
Yeah, the next morning, it was actually one of the top headlines on SportsCenter. They were talking about, like, sibling matchups, and that was one of the first things they mentioned was the Kyle Kurt Busch finish. So,
yeah, they started mentioning all the other – yeah, I saw that. They started mentioning all the other – sibling matchups. Yeah, that's a good one, and that's a great win. Talk to me a little bit about, and you were down there, does Bubba Wallace need to – I think this guy's a great driver. I think Bubba Wallace is a great driver. I think he's in crap equipment. I think Petty doesn't have the money to fund it and do it right. Does he need to move on? Somebody need to pick him up? I love Bubba Wallace. I think he's a great driver.
Yeah, I do too. And personally, I've heard some rumors about RCR buying out that 43 car. So that's an improvement. I also have a theory. Maybe Bubba Wallace ends up driving 1 year in Xfinity for Penske, and then he moves up in a fourth Penske car or something. I think of that because of Ryan Blaney. Maybe Ryan Blaney, his best friend, can put in the good word. But, I mean, yeah, Bubba's a really good driver. I mean, imagine if JGR had held on to him because Toyota has, like, 200 development drivers.
Toyota's only got 6 cars in the series, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, they only have 6 cars. I mean, you got Chevy's got 18. Ford's got 14 or 15, and Toyota only has 6 cars now. I think Bubba Wallace is a marquee driver. You want to get your hands wrapped around as quick as you can and grab that young man because that guy can drive, and he's a personality. I mean, he's a good egg.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, that closes that discussion, I guess. All right, what else we got? We're going on to New Hampshire, right? We're going to New Hampshire?
Yep, we're heading off to Loudon.
Loudon, and it's a mile track or mile and a half? I can't remember. I keep getting it mixed up. Mile track. So we're going to go back to Rubbern's Racing. Who you liking here? I got to think that the Stewart Haas boys are going to win something sometime, somewhere, somehow, one day.
Yeah.
This is a Kevin Harvick kind of track. What are your thoughts on Loudon?
I do like Kevin Harvick's odds. He won this race a year ago. You remember at the end, he kind of pushed Kyle Busch out of the way. That gave him the win. That's what I remember from last year's race. And, perhaps we could see something similar to that again, especially with the aero package. So, Stewart Haas cars look pretty solid at Kentucky, and I think they'll look pretty solid at New Hampshire. I could actually, this time around, I can legitimately see an SHR winner here.
Well, it's going to be about time. They need to pull one out of their rear ends and get a win for somebody on that team, Suarez or Boyer or Harvick. Yeah, I mean, somebody's got to get a win for that team because that's too strong of a team to not have posted a win. Hendrick seems to have fallen off a little bit the last few races. Any concerns there, or are you okay with that? Just bad tracks. Chevy's doing well.
I think Hendrick will do okay. Feels like Hendrick doesn't really Well, again, actually, William Byron looked like he had one of the fastest cars out there at Kentucky, and then he got that restart violation. Johnson was running well, and then he spun out. So they showed some good signs. They just didn't get the results they should have gotten. Of course, Bowman winning at Chicagoland. In the Chevy camp, speaking of which, I forgot to bring this up. Shout out to Chris Buescher. He got another top 10 on a mile and a half. I think that 30-17, who knows? If they could perhaps pull off an upset win, that'd be great. That 30-17 looks pretty fast on mile and a halves. They were pretty good at Kansas. They were pretty good at Kentucky. So I wanted to point that out real quick. That JTT.
Yeah, and you'd love to see that. You'd love to see a guy like Chris Buescher, make the 16, the playoffs, things like that. You always want the underdog in there.
Yeah.
I'd be all for that in a heartbeat if he can get it done. So, but I think the aero package is the best opportunity for these guys to do that now, because I think now racing is returning more to relying on talent versus equipment. And I think that's what NASCAR got right with the aero package. So, all right. Anything else you want to talk about before we shut this thing down?
Actually, I do. I want to kind of bring this up, too. A few places have talked about this. This was from a week ago. Probably should have talked about this sooner. Hyundai is considering joining NASCAR. Hyundai builds about half of the cars it sells in the U.S., Alabama, and now it's thinking of taking its southern cred up another notch, says Fox News. According to a new report, the South Korean company has been in talks to join NASCAR and possibly just in a couple of years. Hyundai's head of global product strategy, Thomas Shemera, told Auto Week that, quote, it is something we are looking at closely, and confirmed that several high-level discussions have already happened. NASCAR is planning to introduce its all-new rules package for its cars in 2021, aimed at making them more relevant to production cars and improving the competition. And the sanctioning body has been trying to recruit new automakers to join Ford, Chevrolet, and Toyota in the Cup Series. Sport Business Journal reporter Adam Stern reported in May that NASCAR officials were seen meeting with Honda representatives on the sidelines of the Indy 500 amid rumors that Richard Petty Racing would team up with Andretti Autosport to develop a Honda-powered car. The so-called Gen 7 design is still a work in progress, but NASCAR has tested some of its potential elements at the All-Star race. No decisions have been made yet on what type of powertrains will be used. So, yeah, apparently what we're looking here is Hyundai, which a name that I completely didn't even think about. Hyundai is considering joining NASCAR in the future.
Okay, a couple questions here. Is it Hyundai or Kia that makes the Genesis car?
Hyundai.
Hyundai. Okay, so that's their luxury car. Do you have a problem with that? I don't have a problem with that. I don't care. I mean, it's anything that infuses more development and intellectual, intelligence into the sport. I'm fine with it. I don't have to live on Chevy, Chrysler, and Ford and Dodge, whatever. I mean, I'm fine with that. Do you have a problem with that?
I really don't, honestly. I'm willing to welcome any manufacturer into the sport. I know some people are like, Toyota's not an American company. Toyota builds most of their cars in America. I used to live near their plant in Georgetown, Kentucky. So, yeah. I mean, Honda.
I drove by their one every day on I-74 going down to Batesville, Indiana, to go see Mike Goodpaster. Yeah, I mean, that was one of their largest plants down there too. So I don't have a problem with it at all. I mean, I think it's all great. Anything that fosters competition and brings some new intelligence into the sport and makes the sport more competitive, and you get more races like Kyle and Kurt going at each other, I think it's only good for the sport, and I see no problem with that whatsoever.
Yeah, and not to mention, like, NASCAR's even said they want to see double the manufacturers they have now. So 3 right now, they want to see. Yeah, so there's a lot of good manufacturers I think that could fit well in here. You got Honda and Hyundai, which have been talked about. Nissan I think would be a great fit. Kia with the Kia Stinger. A lot of people think that's a NASCAR. That's something made for NASCAR. It's a really good performance car they put together. Obviously, a lot of people want Dodge back.
No, I can't believe Dodge is not back. I mean, they sell the Challenger, and my son owns a Charger. I mean, he's got a hopped-up Charger with yellow stripes on the front of his grill. He's got a splitter on the front of this thing. I mean, it's a rocket ship. This thing's got a damn Emmy in it. And, you know, he's on the 405 where he can't drive more than 30 miles an hour, so I don't worry about it because, you know, we're living out here in L.A. You can't drive fast anyway. But I cannot believe Dodge is not in NASCAR. That amazes me more than anything.
I think the problem is what kind of support would they get? Because near the end, when they exited after 2012, they only had one Cup team. That was the two cars they ran at Penske and I think Robbie Gordon's team at the time. You know, Dodge kind of really went downhill. You know, they had, you know, when they first came in, you know, you had Ganassi, you had Evernham, you had Petty, Bill Davis. And,
I know. But Lee Iacocca died, so they're not paying him anymore. His pension is gone, so they can probably afford to get back in. That's a mean thing to say. I apologize for that. That's a very bad thing to say. But
to me, it comes down to
he passed away, and he was probably draining most of the money off of Dodge's profits from his pension, from what he did to raise Dodge up. But I think Dodge needs to be back in the sport. They need to have a car. You know, the Charger. I mean, the Charger or the Challenger, either one of them would fit. I got word. I saw the other day that they're going to come out next year, or 2020, with a new CUDA. They're going to bring back the Barracuda.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I just saw that on one of the auto shows I watch all the time, that they're looking at bringing back the Barracuda, which, you know, is one of the most famous cars that they've ever made. That and the original Charger, which we just watched the movie Bullet the other day, with the Mustang and the Charger going at each other down the strip. So anyway, all right, we're getting off on tangents right now. We need to sign off. Any closing thoughts on who you got this week? Okay, let's make our picks. All right, we're going Loudon, right?
Yep.
All right. I'm going with Harvick.
All righty.
I'm going with Elliott.
All right, Harvick and
Elliott's run well. Elliott's run well, but I don't think he's running well right now. I think that he and Allen are kind of not doing well.
All right.
So I'm going to go with Harvick. I think that it's getting a sense of urgency for SHR to put a win on the board. Just get a win on the board. So I'm going to go with Harvick to win. He's run well there. He's won there a bunch of times, hasn't he?
Yeah, Harvick just had some success there.
Yeah. And then I'm always going to go with my backup. My dark horse is always going to be Elliott. I'm a Bill Elliott fan. I'll just accept his son as a replacement of Bill Elliott. So got to meet Bill Elliott a couple times. That was great.
Oh, nice.
Very nice man. Yeah, at Indy.
Let's
so
see here.
Very, very cool person. Very, very humble, gentleman person, and talk to you like he knew you, like you were your best friend. So, you know, that's good. So who are you going with?
All right, you picked Harvick. I'm going to go with someone else here.
Logano.
No, I'm actually going to go with Denny Hamlin here. He's had some good success here.
Yeah.
He's had some success here. He won here back in 2017. I think that 11 car. Honestly, Hamlin can sneak out another win. He can. He's looking at Kyle and Martin, how good they've been doing. He's like, hey, man, I want to throw my hat in the fire a little bit more. So I think Hamlin would be a good choice here. A little bit different, but certainly someone that, like Kurt Busch, he could be a sleeper. And as for dark horses, I'll be a little weird here. William Byron and Daniel Suarez. Because Byron has shown a lot those two have shown a lot of speed, and they need to get some wins to keep themselves in the playoffs. Byron looked like he had a car that could have won Kentucky, but he had that restart violation. He just stepped back from that. Because I remember that. He and Boyer were battling for the lead. I saw a 24 go down pit road. I checked, and it's like, oh, you got a restart button. Wow. So that's when I was standing off at about turn 4 taking pictures.
Yeah, if I was Daniel Suarez, I'd be a little nervous about Cole Custer. I'd just be a little nervous about that guy. Suarez has not produced but the whole team hasn't produced, so I can't really blame it on him. The whole team hasn't produced, but I tell you what, Cole Custer is. I mean, he's the flavor of the month right now. Guy's winning everything he gets behind the wheel in. Somebody's going to snag him, and we've seen Stewart Haas, make moves like this before. I mean, they booted out Kurt Busch, they booted out Danica Patrick. I mean, both are cash cows because Kurt's got Monster Energy in his back pocket, and Suarez right now is just not getting it done. He's good. There's no doubt he's competitive. But I think that if they go through this and only win 1 or 2 races this year, I think you're looking at some changes at SHR Racing. Tony's not a guy that likes to be mediocre, based on what I've watched him, from his racing days. He wants to win or go home. And so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Suarez, this is his first year there. I don't think Suarez is going to get kicked out that quickly.
Yeah, I know.
He won the pole. If anyone gets kicked out, I hate to say this, but it's because of his age and everything. It's probably Boyer that probably could get.
Yeah, I know, and I love Kurt Boyer. I mean, I hate seeing him lose because if he goes, he'll go to a lesser team, and he'll be like he was before he came to SHR. He'll be a mediocre driver because he needs good equipment. But I think he's a fun guy to have in the sport. He's kind of like a Michael Waltrip, kind of one of those guys that just you want him around all the time because he makes the sport more entertaining and enjoyable to watch. So I hope it doesn't happen, but I think you're probably more accurate there than I am. I would give you that. I'll give you that. I think that Boyer's in more jeopardy than Suarez is at this point in time.
Yeah.
Based on Kurt Busch and Danica. Danica was a cash cow. I mean, she brought money in.
She was a marketing machine.
So, she's a marketing machine, yeah. And she's a marketing machine. Okay, the last question I have for you, then we'll wrap the show up. What, if anything, when you were down there, are you hearing about sponsorship possibilities for the Cup Series next year? Or did you get any feedback or any vibe off that at all? Because that's kind of, I know we're talking about these 10 package deals, these regional deals, where the West Coast will have its own sponsor, the East Coast will have its own sponsor, Florida will have its own sponsor. Did you get any feel for any of that whatsoever when you were out there?
I'll be honest with you, I haven't heard really a whole lot. I haven't really heard much on that ordeal or what will happen, to be honest with you. As I know,
Monster's not coming back as a series sponsorship, are they? They're done, aren't they?
Yeah, but they're going to stay. They're most likely going to stay in the sport. I mean, they sponsor every one of the sports.
They're probably going to stay with Busch because they're pretty well tied to Kurt Busch. I mean, he's run their car for several years. But I think that in terms of a Winston Cup, Monster Cup, Nextel Cup, whatever Cup, you got no flavor at all as to what's going on with that.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be like the NASCAR Cup Series. And I think you take the idea of the title sponsor away, you could possibly allow more companies to come in, like, Monster Energy doesn't have to drive everyone off. Monster could heavily support, and then, Red Bull can come back in, or Rockstar or something like that. Same deal when you have Sprint. You have the telecommunication companies like AT&T come in again, or T-Mobile or something along the lines of that. So, I really haven't heard much about that, but I'm assuming later in the year and going into 2020, we'll probably hear a lot more.
Yeah, I've heard the name. I actually, believe it or not, I've heard the name Kroger thrown around a couple times. Believe it, because Kroger out here in California is Rouse, so they're nationwide. I mean, they're all over the place. So they fit the bill of what they need to do. Because I think in the East Coast are Kroger, on the West Coast are Rouse, and I just heard that name. Just reading crap on Twitter, I've heard that name thrown around. So, but I don't know if they have that kind of money to put a $40-50 million, sponsorship package. But interesting to watch, interesting to follow. Hey, I did get a tweet back from Shannon Spake.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I tweeted her, and she tweeted back. I'm in hog heaven. And Adam Alexander. I got both of them now. Now I get Larry McReynolds.
I ran into him at Kentucky Speedway.
Yeah, he's got to be a cool dude.
Yeah, he was there because of the Quaker State throwback that Paul Menard did. It was a throwback to Steve Kinzer, who I also met and talked to for a couple minutes with James Ernest, who I was with. So, got to meet a lot of people. Met Bob Pockras, said hi to Dale Jr. for a minute.
You're better than Bob Pockras. You're better. I mean, I like Bob. I read stuff. I follow him on Twitter, all that stuff. But you're better.
Well,
so, Bob, if you're listening, the hell with you.
Oh, jeez. No, Bob, I got a lot of respect for the guy. He's
I do too.
He's the best in the business. I mean, he knows things before anyone else does. I know that as a fact.
Well, he's there all the time. I mean, you would too if you were there all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Wrap up the show before we get Bob Pockras pissed off at us right now. He's already pissed off at me, so the hell with it. So, no big deal.
Oh, boy. Anyway. All right. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to this show here, this fun Kentucky weekend. I'm sure Kentucky's going to look to a lot more fun weekends ahead in the future. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you next week from Steve Risley and myself, Alex Gray, here on The Grueling Truth, where legends speak. We're signing off.